Ambassador. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. Good morning.
Hi, man.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Namibia.
Yes.
Okay. So what are you looking forward to? Yeah, today is the beginning of the high level, and yesterday was the summit of the future. What are you looking to hear and take away from this? I know the president met with the Secretary General.
Well, we are a member country. We subscribe to the SDGs. We now have reviewed. We know that the world has fallen behind. There's a new compact. Everybody is looking up to that. We were an intricate part. So we're looking to celebrate the future along the new compact. We're looking to celebrate the African countries getting a seat on the Security Council. So Namibia is very positively inspired going forward. We also are very aware that it is a year of elections in Namibia. So we, being a product of the United Nations Resolution 435, we are an intricate part of what the UN turns out to the future by the way of the compact. So we are really looking forward.
You are hopeful.
We are very hopeful.
You are very hopeful.
Otherwise, life is a tragedy.
Okay, I'm gonna work with you I know today is a busy day. Climate is one topic that will be discussed,
yes,
which is something that affects Africa significantly. We also have the issue of multilateralism, refinancing World Bank and reforming World Bank and the other multilateral institutions. So again, in terms of the agenda, how do you see that working for Africa?
Africa has been the longest screaming for the world to reconsider the world financial architecture. That very setup. Africa is a recipient of climate change. Namibia in particular. It's not unheard of that Namibia will have a flood and a drought period back to back in the same year. So climate change is a significant subject. And this is why Namibia has adopted to actually contribute to net zero. So we're doing a green hydrogen project. We've quite advanced in this whole thing, and that is our way of a new source of energy for the future, plus contribute to the net effect of carbon dioxide on the climate. So both ways, when you look at it, we are in it. And we celebrate that advancement in our history as a drought-stricken country. So climate change, it's real for us as Namibians. It's also not totally unheard of that you could have a drought spell for 10 years back to back.
So
it is important, a development for our country.
Okay. President Biden is speaking today.
Yeah.
I know leaders are paying attention to it. In the last 3 years, since first day he came into office, it redefined the relationship between the U.S. and Africa. What do you think his legacy is in terms of that relationship and what he has done in the last 3 years?
For what Africa has contributed to the world, and that which has not been recognized, he still has a whole lot he should have done to leave a legacy that Africans can dance up to. There's a whole lot the world needs to do in terms of making sure Africa is a part of it. Africa can't just be the provider of all the West needs, for all the critical raw minerals into the new technologies, for all the new energy sources, just transitioning. Africa plays a role, but Africa is the least that contribute the West to what we now currently suffer. So for legacy, at least the fact that they have accepted that we deserve a place on the Security Council, and still we not been granted the veto as a player, a significant player in the world today. So we can't celebrate yet. There's much to be celebrated.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
What are you looking forward to today? Good morning.
Good?
You?
Good?
Have a good time?
Oh yeah.
Not yet. President Biden motorcade arriving at the UN headquarters on 1st Avenue for the president's final remarks. The UNGA.
Back up a little bit.
That's President Biden motorcade.
Oh, magari lei sarà dire a
Preston. The 46 presidents. That's the pool. Pool. President Biden motorcade just arrived at the UN headquarters, and the president is scheduled to deliver remarks at 10 a.m. this morning. Is run a little bit late. In his remarks, the president will talk about rallying the international community regarding the global financial institution reform, as well as calling for reform at the United Nations. Also, the president also will talk. We've reported on this regarding rallying the global community to tackle critical issues such as reducing global poverty, addressing the climate crisis, among some of the other issues that we talk about. As we've reported, and Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield also preview regarding the UN Security Council. There's been a lot of call for that. We spoke to one of the delegates for the Namibia government today. As we've reported, the Namibia president met with the Secretary General Antonio Guterres ahead of this week remarks, and the delegate that we spoke with today told us that it is about time that Africa as well as other developing countries have representation on the Security Council. So we will be bringing the president's we begin his remarks. Now we will bring you additional updates after the president's remarks. The president also will deliver remarks at the Bloomberg climate event. Today, after his remarks, the president is scheduled to meet with the Secretary General for a bilateral meeting. This is the president's final remarks to the UN General Assembly for his presidency, and there's a lot of interest regarding his remarks, giving restoring American leadership to the global world, and all that he has done through the G7, the G20 alliance, as well as the COP, the UN COP activity. So we will be bringing you more additional updates regarding the president's event later on today.
Joseph R. Biden Jr., President of the United States of America. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
My back. My fellow leaders, today is the fourth time I've had the great honor of speaking to this Assembly as President of the United States. It'll be my last. I've seen a remarkable sweep of history. I was first elected to office in the United States of America as a U.S. Senator in 1972. Now, I know I look like I'm only 40. I know that. I was 29 years old. Back then, we were living through an inflection point, a moment of tension and uncertainty. The world was divided by the Cold War. The Middle East was headed toward war. America was at war in Vietnam. At that point, the longest war in America's history. Our country was divided and angry, and there were questions about our staying power and our future. But even then, I entered public life not out of despair, but out of optimism. The United States and the world got through that moment. It wasn't easy or simple without significant setbacks. But we would go on to reduce the threat of nuclear weapons through arms control, and then go on to bring the Cold War itself to an end. Israel and Egypt went to war, but then forged a historic peace. We ended the war in Vietnam. The last year in Hanoi, I met with the Vietnamese leadership. We elevated our partnership to the highest level. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for reconciliation. That today the United States and Vietnam are partners and friends. And it's proof that even from the horrors of war, there's a way forward. Things can get better. We should never forget that. I've seen that throughout my career. In the 1980s, I spoke out against apartheid in South Africa. And then I watched the racist regime fall. In the 1990s, I worked to hold Milosevic accountable for war crimes. He was held accountable. At home, I wrote and passed the Violence Against Women Act to end the scourge of violence against women and girls, not only in America, but across the world, as many of you have as well. But we have so much more to do, especially against rape and sexual violence as weapons of war and terror. We were attacked on 9/11 by Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. We brought him justice. Then I came to the presidency at another moment of crisis and uncertainty. I believed America had to look forward. New challenges, new threats, new opportunities were in front of us. We needed to put ourselves in a position to see the threats, to deal with the challenges, and to seize the opportunities as well. We need to end the era of war that began on 9/11. As Vice President to President Obama, he asked me to work to wind down the military operations in Iraq, and we did, painful as it was. When I came to office as president, Afghanistan had replaced Vietnam as America's longest war. I was determined to end it, and I did. It was a hard decision, but the right decision. 4 American presidents had faced that decision, but I was determined not to leave it to the 5th. It was a decision accompanied by tragedy. 13 brave Americans lost their lives, along with hundreds of Afghans in a suicide bomb. I think those lost lives, I think of them every day. I think of all the 2,461 U.S. military deaths over a long 20 years of that war. 20,744 American servicemen wounded in action. I think of their service, their sacrifice, and their heroism. I know other countries lost their own men and women fighting alongside us. We honor their sacrifices as well. To face the future, I was also determined to rebuild my country's alliances and partnerships to a level not previously seen. We did just that, from traditional treaty alliances to new partnerships like the Quad with the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. I know many look at the world today and see difficulties and react with despair, but I do not. I won't. As leaders, we don't have the luxury. I recognize the challenges from Ukraine to Gaza to Sudan and beyond. War, hunger, terrorism, brutality, record displacement of people, a climate crisis, democracy at risk, strains within our societies, the promise of artificial intelligence and its significant risk. The list goes on. But maybe because all I've seen and all we have done together over the decades, I have hope. I know there is a way forward. In 1919, the Irish poet William Butler Yeats described a world, and I quote, "where things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world," end of quote. Some may say those words describe the world not just in 1919, but in 2024. But I see a critical distinction. In our time, the center has held. Leaders and people from every region and across the political spectrum have stood together, turned the page. We turned the page in the worst pandemic in a century. We made sure COVID no longer controls our lives. We defended the UN Charter and ensured the survival of Ukraine as a free nation. My country made the largest investment in climate, clean energy, ever anywhere in history. There will always be forces that pull our countries apart and the world apart. Aggression, extremism, chaos, and cynicism. A desire to retreat from the world and go it alone. Our test is to make sure that the forces holding us together are stronger than those who are pulling us apart. That the principles of partnership that we came here each year to uphold can withstand the challenges. That the center holds once again. My fellow leaders, I truly believe we're at another inflection point in world history. For the choices we make today will determine our future for decades to come. Will we stand behind the principles that unite us? Will we stand firm against aggression? Will we end the conflicts that are raging today? We take on global challenges like climate change, hunger, and disease. Will we plan now for the opportunities and risk of a revolutionary new technologies? I want to talk today about each of these decisions and the actions, in my view, we must take. To start, each of us in this body has made a commitment to the principles of the UN Charter to stand up against aggression. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we could have stood by and merely protested. But Vice President Harris and I understood that that was an assault on everything this institution was supposed to stand for. And so, my direction, America stepped into the breach, providing massive security and economic and humanitarian assistance. Our NATO allies and partners in 50-plus nations stood up as well. But most importantly, the Ukrainian people stood up. I asked the people of this chamber to stand up for them. The good news is Putin's war has failed and at his core aim. He set out to destroy Ukraine, but Ukraine is still free. He set out to weaken NATO, but NATO is bigger, stronger, and more united than ever before, with 2 new members, Finland and Sweden. But we cannot let up. The world now has another choice to make. Will we sustain our support to help Ukraine win this war and preserve its freedom? Or walk away and let aggression be renewed and a nation be destroyed? I know my answer. We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine. Not until Ukraine wins a just and durable peace in the UN Charter. We also need to uphold our principles as we seek to responsibly manage the competition with China so it does not veer into conflict. We stand ready to cooperate on urgent challenges for the good of our people and the people everywhere. We recently resumed cooperation with China to stop the flow of deadly synthetic narcotics. I appreciate the collaboration. It matters for the people of my country and many others around the world. Together we must deny oxygen to its terrorist proxies. Gaza is not the only conflict that deserves our outrage. In Sudan, a bloody civil war unleashed one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. 8 million on the brink of famine. Hundreds of thousands already there. Atrocities in Darfur and elsewhere. The United States has led the world in providing humanitarian aid to Sudan. And with our partners, we've led diplomatic talks to try to silence the guns and avert a wider famine. The world needs to stop arming the generals, to speak with one voice and tell them, stop tearing your country apart, stop blocking aid to the Sudanese people, end this war now. But people need more than the absence of war. They need a chance to live in dignity. They need to be protected from the ravages of climate change, hunger, and disease. Our administration has invested over $150 billion to make progress and other sustainable development goals. It includes $20 billion for food security, over $50 billion for global health. We've mobilized billions more in private sector investment. We've taken the most ambitious climate action in history. We've moved to rejoin the Paris Agreement on day one. And today, my country is finally on track to cut emissions in half by 2030. On track to honor my pledge to quadruple climate financing to developing nations with $11 billion thus far this year. We've rejoined the World Health Organization, donating nearly 700 million doses of COVID vaccine to 117 countries. We must now move quickly to face Mpox outbreak in Africa. We're prepared to commit $500 million to help African countries prevent and respond to Mpox and to donate 1 million doses of Mpox vaccine now. We call on our partners to match our pledge and make this a billion-dollar commitment to the people of Africa. Beyond the core necessities of food and health, the United States, the G7, and our partners have embarked on an ambitious initiative to mobilize and deliver significant finance to the developing world. We're working to help countries build out their infrastructure, to clean energy transition, to the digital transformation, to lay new economic foundations for a prosperous future. It's called the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. We've already started to see the fruits of this emerge in Southern Africa and Southeast Asia and in the Americas. We have to keep it going. I want to get things done together. In order to do that, we must build a stronger, more effective, and more inclusive United Nations. The UN needs to adapt and bring new voices and new perspectives. That's why we support reforming and expanding the membership of the UN Security Council. My UN ambassador just laid out our detailed vision to reflect today's world, not yesterday's. It's time to move forward. The Security Council, like the UN itself, needs to go back to the job of making peace, of brokering deals to end wars and suffering. And to stop the spread of the most dangerous weapons, of stabilizing troubled regions in East Africa, from East Africa to Haiti, to Kenya-led mission that's working alongside the Haitian people to turn the tide. We also have a responsibility to prepare our citizens for the future. We'll see more technological change, I argue, in the next 2 to 10 years than we have in the last 50 years. Artificial intelligence is going to change our ways of life, our ways of work, and our ways of war. It could usher in scientific progress at a pace never seen before, and much of it could make our lives better. But AI also brings profound risks, from deep fakes to disinformation, to novel pathogens, to bioweapons. We've worked at home and abroad to define the new norms and standards. This year, we achieved the first ever General Assembly resolution on AI to start developing global rules of the road. We also announced a declaration on the responsible use of AI, joined by 60 countries in this chamber. But let's be honest, this is just the tip of the iceberg, what we need to do to manage this new technology. Nothing is certain about how AI will evolve or how it will be deployed. No one knows all the answers. My fellow leaders, it's with humility I offer 2 questions. First, how do we as an international community govern AI? As countries and companies race to uncertain frontiers, we need an equally urgent effort to ensure AI's safety, security, and trustworthiness.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
Yes.
What do you think of President Biden's speech and also?
We'll talk later. Later.
Okay, so is there a promise for an interview with you?
Yeah.